have a pleasure of introducing our next speaker, who is already with us, from Great Fridays, the boutique consulting company. Jeremy Offer is the design director of the company, and personally me, I'm very much excited to hear also a little bit about Great Fridays, but definitely about the topic that you're going to share with us. Warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Just trying to get this running. So, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Jeremy Offer. I'm design director for Great Fridays. Before we begin, I would like to just share with you an anecdote about a company that we've heard quite a lot about today. In 2010, we were invited to pitch for the industrial design of a product that's had a reasonable amount of press recently, and pretty much single-handedly started the discussion on wearable technology. So first, a little bit of background. When I was in my late teens, it was a long time ago, I was traveling around the Greek islands, and I kind of bumped into this hip, young Californian dreadlocked guy who was sort of surfing his way around Greece, and we got on well. After the holiday, we stayed in touch with one another. This is all pre-email, pre-internet. Fast forward 25 years to 2010, and I get this email out of the blue. So Isaac just happens to have become the operations director for the special projects division of Google X. Of course, I modestly said I was that superstar designer, and was invited by the project leader BEL.BIZ to visit their executive team in Mountain View, to pitch our services and to create a design strategy for what was then dubbed as wearable Android. You probably know it better now as Google Glass. My instructions were, meet me at building 42 next to the T-Rex. That's the T-Rex in question, one of, apparently, a real T-Rex, not just a model, covered in pink flamingos. A few weeks before I was due to visit, Google had announced they were pulling out of China. And as I was setting up the presentation, I had a fairly intense pep talk from my host, which went something like this. If John is in the room, he'll be Googling everything you're showing us to make sure that you've actually designed it. If Mike is in the room, he'll be working out how much you can buy your company for. If Konstantin is in the room, talk about China. He's an engineer, he's German, he understands all these things. If Sergey Brin is in the room, don't mention China. He fucking hates China. So that was my introduction to Google. As you can imagine, the state of my nerves before that presentation. Such is life on the West Coast. Anyway, on to matters in hand. Great Fridays, who are we? We were founded in Manchester, England in 2008. We're a product and service design company. We currently employ around 60 people, offices in Manchester, London, San Francisco, New York. In the autumn of 2013, we made a strategic decision to find a partner who understood our vision and aspirations. And as Arkady has stated already today, we are proud to say that we're now the newest member of the EPAM family. Our new union delivers across our four most important criteria. Find a partner who shares our focus on a design-led future, protect our brand, proposition and people, give our design group global scale and a new set of delivery capabilities, and finally provide our people with amazing opportunities to further themselves. Beneficial disruption and transformation can only be achieved when possessing the understanding and capability to deliver on the service vision. Working alongside EPAM, our transformational thinking can now be executed on a scale we never imagined possible, changing business through design on a truly global scale. What exactly does a service design company do? Well, there's a lot of crossover here with what Tobias was saying. People view the world and interact with brands across channels, products and services in a myriad of different ways. Combining people, technology, business and design can help improve the interaction between service provider and people. We act as a partner to challenge and collaborate with business to make this happen. We help our clients to envisage the future of their market, create new and innovative business models, process rethinking, organizational structures, and leadership. We help define how their users want to interact and engage with products and services. We enable rapid technology change to optimize the chance of executing the correct strategy. And importantly, we nurture long-term strategic relationships, breaking down the barriers traditionally found in a consultant-client relationship to form long-lasting partnerships. We work with businesses in a number of different capacities, developing products and services in harmony with business practice. This approach ensures that our design output is measurable, profitable, and creates lasting business value across every aspect of the process, from delighting customers with fantastic products and services to establishing frameworks for the future. Who do we do this for? A number of well-known blue-chip companies there. We design software services and next-generation personal navigation devices for Nokia, application prototype delivery for Adobe, contactless payment systems for MasterCard, which again Arkady referenced earlier, defining and delivering GPS tracking products and services for Vodafone, strategic design services for Sonos, award-winning digital audio products for Revo, and full service design including web, mobile app, and product for Chinese audio giant IAG. Business in the 20 plus years, I told you I was old, I've been a designer, has actually changed significantly. I just wanted to spend a little time outlining what the current landscape looks like. By putting this into the context of the past, we can start to see the framework that service design, and more specifically industrial design, operates within today. So a little bit of a history lesson. 1900 to 1960 was the age of manufacturing. In this era, if you owned the factory, you owned the market. In the age of manufacturing, companies built up a lead on competitors with convenient, well-priced, mass-produced products. 1960 to 1990 was the age of distribution. Two trends changed things in the 60s. Business started globalizing, and retail moved with the population to the suburbs. Deregulation and free trade meant companies could manufacture cheaply all across Asia. In this world, the key barrier to competition was the distribution network, one that brought supplies from where they were cheapest into local retail stores where consumers, energized by mass advertising, could buy branded goods. 1990 to 2010 was the age of information. Companies with information-centric products and services thrived, including cable and mobile operators, software companies, and financial service providers. They embraced global manufacturing supply chains and eventually data-fueled e-commerce to extend that power. Now, kind of this brings us bang up to date. 2010 and beyond is the age of the customer. Again, very much in line with what Tobias was saying. One by one, every corporate investment has been commoditized. Now every company can tap into global factories and global supply chains. Manufacturing, distribution, IT-oriented technology management, they're all just table stakes. The only source of competitive advantage is the one that can survive technology-fueled disruption. An obsession with understanding, connecting with, and serving customers. In this age, companies that thrive shift their budgets, people, and business structure towards consumer knowledge and relationships. We're fast moving from a consumer culture to an experience-based culture. A few years ago, if you weren't happy with a product, you'd take it back to the store, you'd maybe complain to the shop assistant, perhaps your family, and you'd walk away with a refund or a replacement product. In today's age, if you're not happy with a product, you can tell the world about it instantly. And if enough people are complaining about your product, that is exceptionally damaging and ultimately destructive to your brand. We're increasingly expecting products and services to interact with all our senses. If a brand lets us down in any shape or form, they lose our loyalty. Our approach is heavily focused on placing the customer at the heart of business. Their requirements and satisfaction are the driving force for our decision making. We believe in creating products and service focused on the customer's need, coherent, consistent and connected, across all touch points, the digital and physical products working as one. Service used by millions such as Apple, Amazon and indeed Google have raised the bar in terms of user experience, and as a result customers' expectation levels have increased accordingly. In a multi-channel world, a successful customer experience is now judged on the overall user experience and service experience. Service design defines business solutions across all channels and platforms. Looking at business challenges through the lens of a user, we enable businesses to think differently. Focusing from the outside in allows companies to look past their own internal barriers to come up with solutions that are both relevant, engaging, and profitable. I'd like to spend the rest of this presentation now drilling down into one of the key verticals within service design, industrial design, which is my own specific speciality. It's usually seen as the development of three-dimensional objects for mass production. We're advocating a concept that incorporates far more than this. It's one of the cornerstones of service design, enabling and enhancing the customer experience, creating the connection between product, user, and environment. A successful service rarely exists without a physical component, whether that's the espresso machine that made your coffee in the morning or the chair that you sat on whilst you were drinking it. We're still heavily reliant on physical products. However, in today's digital world, more often than not, we rely on software for the experience, bolted onto a third-party device to deliver it. This is due in part to the commoditization of hardware. PCs and smartphones are pretty easy now for brands to bolt on their services. This OEM approach is, rather than developing their own hardware, is resulting in a negative overall impact on the experience. I love this statement. It's such a simple but pertinent statement. Business cannot sacrifice the experience for growth. It should drive growth from the quality of the experience. It just simply links business success with the customer experience. So what we're talking about here is one of total customer experience. Part of how we can achieve this is develop custom hardware, tightly integrated and working in harmony with the digital. By doing so, the hardware becomes the portal to the experience, increasing brand visibility, value, and customer loyalty. However, design in this context is a mere event. It's only when design is at the heart of business and becomes part of a fully integrated culture that permeates all areas of a company's R&D, manufacturing, supply chain, and follow-up flows that you end up with a far stronger brand. We're currently experiencing what we're terming as a hardware renaissance. The rapidly falling cost of building hardware has touched off a wave of innovation that's starting to equal the software-driven dot-com boom of the late 90s. Opportunities abound for custom-designed hardware. Connected smart devices are the platform to deliver software services or to replace traditional analog services. As the journalist Stephen Levi wrote in a recent Wired article, hardware devices have evolved to become front ends for software services. This approach to total product design helps reinforce brands as now as full service companies rather than simply software providers, and it starts to afford them a presence in the physical world as well as the virtual one. Most of you are going to recognize this. It's currently what we consider to be the best and most publicized example of a company that epitomizes this approach. Nest. You need no introduction. Google paid, as I'm sure you all know, $3.2 billion for a company that sells a thermostat and a smoke detector. They didn't just acquire them, obviously, for the hardware. Nest, the physical product, is the gateway to the data gathering that gives them an insight into the way that we all live. It's a tangible manifestation of the Internet of Things. Having spent about an hour and a half trying to program my thermostat in the hotel room last night, it's also the very first product that I've quite happily received as a gift. It's, honestly, user experience with traditional thermostats has nothing compared to the elegance of operation Nest has managed to create in a product and service. As I've previously alluded to, the cost to enter the market with a new product has now dramatically decreased. Combine this with new ways of funding design and production, such as Kickstarter, along with access to Far East and contract manufacture, and we remove the barriers traditionally associated with disruptive innovation. What is product anyway? It's, in my world, has traditionally meant anything physical. The digital revolution obviously now symbolises product as both physical and virtual. We no longer distinguish between the two definitions. For us, anything that defines the business itself is product. At Great Fridays, we create products that span all platforms, working across entire ecosystems and new environments. Wherever a user interacts with a physical touch point, there is an opportunity for a product we can design. But to quote Bob Brunner, unless the idea pervades the way it looks, the way it operates, what it does, how it's branded, and how people identify with the brand, your product is not complete. These are all things that go into making a great product, which in turn becomes a great business. Technology has transformed the hardware user experience. We no longer rely on analog interfaces, but rather intuitively driven, gesture-based touchscreen interfaces. A few years ago, as industrial designers, we spent all our time defining and designing these analog interfaces, buttons, switches, jog wheels, traditional ways of interfacing with a product. Now, of course, we've got much cheaper capacitive touchscreen technology. How we interact with products that we own has been transformed forever. I was listening to a very interesting discussion with a Samsung designer who was extolling the virtues of back in the 90s, how he used to design the whole phone. And now, of course, we then got shifted to starting to design the side of the phone. And then all of a sudden, my microphone dies.
This.
Now, pretty much all we've got left is the back of the phone. Of course, one could say Samsung now just copy Apple, but it's a shame that microphone broke. I was halfway through my punchline. I would like to finish before. I don't know if I've got time to do some case studies, but if anybody's interested, I just want to talk you through a few examples. But before I get to that, I just want to quote another a passage from Bob Brunner's wonderful book on design. How does your company matter? Bob Brunner, if any of you don't know him, he's the ex-industrial design director of Apple, hired Jonathan Ive, now just made a fortune designing Beats audio products. So he knows what he's talking about. Product design is a total concept. How it operates, how it sounds, how it feels. Included in the design is the experience of how you buy it. The experience of what happens when you actually get possession of it and open up the box. How you start to feel and what all of this communicates back to you. And then, of course, there's a chain of events through which you became aware of the product in the first place. What all of these touch points mean to you, they are all part of the design. I think that sums it up absolutely beautifully. I think the fact that, in layman's term, design purely means the decorative, the element that creates desirability. There's a much more subliminal message going on behind all of this, that unless it permeates every aspect of your business, you don't truly embrace what design can mean to you. So some of the sort of fun stuff we've got through the drawing presentation. I just want to take you through some of the examples of work that we've done in the recent past, which hopefully ties together all of these things that we've been talking about. IAG, I mentioned them earlier in the presentation. They're a Chinese audio giant based out in Shenzhen, In the late 90s, they basically went on a buying spree and bought up all the ailing British hi-fi brands, so brands like Mission, Audio Lab, Quad is another great one. Founded by two brothers, Michael and Bernard Chang, in the 80s. It's as I say, there's a deep heritage across a number of hi-fi brands. We were asked in 2011 to design their first foray into the consumer market. Up on the screen there, you can see the channels that we were engaged in. So it really did become initially design of the product itself, which in this instance I'm going to show you is a wireless Bluetooth flagship speaker for them. But it also then broadened out into the whole set of other design disciplines. So the user experience design, the control application, the experience design, the software engineering, all of it came together to create the entire service. These are the deliverables that we created out of the back of that. And I want to just quickly go through some of the steps that took us to the design of Aero, which became their flagship speaker. Primarily, I'm going to focus on the actual industrial design, but I'm going to also show you some of the examples of the marketing collateral that we produce around areas like animation, product animation. So help Mission enter the lifestyle consumer market by designing a sleek wireless speaker. All of the images, by the way, that you see here are all CGI renderings. We don't tend to create, in the first instance, too many physical prototypes. It's much quicker for us and streamlined when we're dealing with particularly surface materials like aluminium to actually render those out. So these are the studio renders that actually went into the website collateral because they were better than the studio photography that they created. So Mission is a brand that anybody of my age and who's British will understand because it's probably the first pair of proper hi-fi speakers they ever bought. They went through a period of reinvention away from becoming a strictly hi-fi oriented brand to a much more consumer brand, and that's really the message that we wanted to help them with. So starting with some initial sketches, we then went into some of the mechanical engineering components, created, again, high-resolution detail renderings of some of the details. In this instance, on the bottom right there, you see the LEDs. We created full kind of X-ray renderings as part of the marketing collateral, which you can just slide up and down to reveal, as well as leading into the photography. This is just some sort of art direction photography that I took actually just around my house of the product, which then started to inform the professional, if you like. We used a marvelous photographer called Gerhard Kellman, a German photographer, to create some pretty striking lifestyle imagery. There's a few examples. I mean, we created dozens and dozens of photos. It was a fun couple of days. The next phase was to work with the animation team to create a fully rendered photorealistic animation. Now this started off with some creation of some storyboard images, so these are very highly detailed from the engineering CAD. So everything kind of feeds from that first basic CAD model, which we then create, as I say, these sort of schematic model in white renderings to show the detail. And we created a whole storyboard of these, which then quickly turned into a wireframe animatic, along with some fairly cheesy sound effects, actually, which did get scrapped. So this very quickly went into wireframe, slightly more finished rendered animation, showing some of the key frames. So the animator had this idea of interspersing sort of a classical soundtrack with these really kind of technical, crunching sounds to bring the whole product together. The client actually ended up not liking it. So we ditched that and went with a bit more of a techno soundtrack. And this was the final animation as it ended up. used primarily in a lot of their point of sale, so another part of the project was to create all of that collateral for their point of sale, so we created a physical device for that as well. I think this is the element that I'm most proud of, actually. Once we were commissioned to do the product, they realized just how much more we could offer the client. The foray away from a strictly hi-fi brand into a much more consumer offering meant that they were going to go wireless with a lot of their products for the first time. So this meant creating a bespoke control app. So a lot of so for example, chip providers that they were using were able to provide them with an OEM, not particularly good, a little bit clunky application to drive the speakers. But we felt it imperative as part of the whole brand experience that we create our own interactive experience that explored your music collection the way you wanted to, in a much more intuitive way. This started off with, again, back to some of the sort of points that Tobias was making, the real world prototyping of a digital product, which in this case starts off with our old favourite, a pen and paper. Let's start sketching ideas to prototype and paper prototypes. There's still a huge place for that. We then very quickly moved into wireframes, again mapping out the entire experience through a wireframe, and then early visual design concepts. Now, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the volume control here. So on your smartphone, and again, this comes from a training as an industrial designer. A lot of our guys are trained as industrial designers, even though they may have started to move into more strategic positions. Elements such as ergonomics is a key driver. So rather than sort of using your thumb kind of, trying to scrub along the volume at the bottom of your screen, we started to think how, as a user, that would manifest itself in a much more intuitive way. So we started to think about using full screen volume controls. So you've got this, is that moving? No, it's not. Yes, it is. So yeah, you can use your thumb on the entire screen to convert the touchscreen into a volume control. And the same thing with the track scrubbing as well. So the client loved this. We now launch, I think this is about to launch in May. There's a few little software bugs to iron out. One of the problems actually is when you're dealing with a software company integrating software and hardware together is working with third-party chipset manufacturers in Asia, for example. It's very difficult to keep that aligned with the product development program as you are, in your design work. And then the last thing we created as part of that was a robust toolkit so that the developers could start to implement all of the various design cues, the bits that make it special from a visual design perspective. And this has now led into a whole suite of other products. So we're now working with them to design on-ear headphones, starting with sketches through to slightly more finished digital sketches. How are we doing for time? Am I okay for time? Okay. As you can see, these are some of the visuals that we've started to produce around the concept. So very, very quickly able to iterate on these. I'll very, very quickly, I promise you, talk about Vodafone. We've recently been engaged to design and workshop around what could come out of various GPS technologies. So in this instance, we, through a 2-day workshop we had at Vodafone's offices in Paddington, in London, we created a new service around protecting European scooter users, which came out through from some research, from theft and accidental damage using GPS tracking. And again, we went through the same processes, workshopping, there's your sticky whiteboard notes, and process thinking, talking through the user journeys and the profiles, and thinking like the user, thinking through the lens of the user. Again, paper prototype. So the process is very, very similar. We go through this to create all the products and services that we do. Industrial design sketches to see what the housing could look like. Working, I must add, with some very tight constraints around the hardware, the electronics inside, which was purchased from an OEM Taiwanese manufacturer. Again, some more renderings, really kind of playing on the aesthetic of European scooters, that old kind of lovely glossy, surface continuous, automotive styling. So again, sort of the software that we use, Alias in this case, creates really seamless, beautiful surfacing. So you don't notice when you hit an edge or a fillet. All of these surfaces, although they're separate, actually create a lovely, seamless, glossy approach. And then the final renderings. So this was, again, tying it in with that European scooter aesthetic. It became a really simple, lovely little jewel-like case, which moved it away considerably from the product that they had as an OEM test product, which was effectively a little black box. Prototyping for the app. Prototyping again visually for the exploring colorways. On the left there is the actual electronics package that we had to deal with. So again, really tightly constrained by that. Anything that we created with any kind of curvature meant that we came outside of the package, so it was slightly larger than the original prototype, but something that they were willing to sacrifice. And then things like engineering detail sketching. You know, all of this has to be thought through and developed and designed. So these little cross-section scribbles in notebooks, they all become part of the story. And then on to prototypes. 3 months, 120 working prototypes, and 1 new service. And I'll just finish on a video of the application prototype in full swing. So it moves through the app's core functionality. We're able to see the key interactions the user would make to pair the device, track their scooter, and importantly, the steps to go through once the scooter's stolen. So these are just videos that we just took in the studio. Really quick, really simple, a couple of hours to make, half an hour to edit, but it gives the product some presence, and you know, it means that client executives can start to show what their money is being spent on, something tangible. Now I have got a host of other case studies, but unfortunately we've not got time. But if anybody is interested, you know, feel free to come and grab me afterwards and I can talk through some more. But thanks very much.
Thank you very much. I think it was very interesting to hear from the point of the design, because exactly we're discussing, you might have a great idea, but how do you show it? And today, I mean, we're touching things, we're feeling them, and it's very, very important. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you. We have a small thing for you. It's not as greatly designed as it is, but hopefully, but it's very practical, okay? It's a charger, because I'm sure you're traveling a lot, so it's for the phone.